Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's debate. My name is Caitlin Lang and I am the chairman, and Ned Wheaton is the timekeeper. The adjudicators are Mr. Saxon, Mr. McCaskill, and Mr. Morton. The topic of this debate is that we should follow Finland and phase out cursive writing in schools. The affirmative team, seated to my right, is from Pembroke School. The negative team is also from Pembroke School. The speaking time for this debate is 4 minutes. A single warning bell will sound 1 minute before the speaking time, and a double bell will sound at the speaking time. Continuous bell may be rung 30 seconds after the speaking time, in which case the speaker must sit down immediately. Please ensure that your mobile phones and other electronic devices are switched off. I declare this debate open and call upon the first affirmative speaker, Charlie Abbott.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that we should follow Finland and phase out cursive writing in schools. We define the topic as we, being those of us seated in this room tonight, along with the rest of Australia, should follow, as would be beneficial for us to follow in the same steps as Finland, as the Northern European country of Finland. Phase out, as in get rid of. Cursive writing we define as a form of longhand script in which the symbols are written in a conjoined and/or flowing manner, and schools as an institute for educating students in Australia. We, the affirmative team, strongly believe this statement to be true. As the first speaker, I am going to talk about how cursive writing is being superseded by technology and why Finland got rid of this form of script in the first place. Our second speaker, Emma, will explain that cursive writing is currently included in the Australian curriculum, but such a form of handwriting is not so relevant to the Australian curriculum and so should not be phased out. Should be phased out, as happened in Finland. She will also explain how skills taught in schools should have some relevance at work and in everyday life. Our third speaker, Annika, will rebut the other team's argument and sum up our team's case. According to the Huffington Post publication, Finland is currently ranked the #1 in the world for educational standards. This ranking is based on international test scores, graduation rates, and the prevalence of higher education seekers. So it would make sense, ladies and gentlemen, for us as Australians to follow the #1 educational country in the world. I mean, they must be doing something right. We used to do joined up writing so that we could write faster. But these days, students only start learning it in grade 2 and have a year to get it right before moving on to concentrating on what they write rather than simply how they write it. Says Minna Hermanen of Finland's National Board of Education. They don't have time to become fast at cursive writing, so it's not useful to them, she continued to say. At a conference of the National Council of Teachers of English, it was brought to the attention by Katie van Sluis, a professor at DePaul University, that we need to make sure that students will be ready for what's going to happen in 2020 or 2030, and we would argue that cursive writing does not do this. Now to my second point. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you, but I love my technology. So I ask you, what exactly is the point of cursive writing? We no longer need to keep the ink blots off of our paper, off of our parchment, the original reason for the development of cursive. Technology is the future. These days, the vast majority of schoolwork and jobs can be carried out via the computer. We are privileged here in Australia to have exposure to a huge array of modern, advanced technologies which are widely accessible due to great facilities such as public libraries. These days, it doesn't matter how neat you are, because students get marked, graded, and judged on what they write, rather than whether their L has a big enough flick at the end of it. My handwriting is appalling, but I don't mind, because there is not an assessed piece of work, other than tests, that I don't hand in after it's been typed up, spell-checked, retyped, spell-checked again, printed out, ripped up, and then shot off to the wonderful world of email. According to theage.com, Finland phased out cursive because they finally woke up and acknowledged that the world has changed, that the rise of technology has transformed the way we work and communicate. Handwritten documents, letters, cards, and traditional snail mail post have given way to typed documents, emails, and text messages made using computers, tablets, or phones. So, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chairman, we the affirmative team passionately feel that cursive is worth nothing to us, in what may not even be the peak of the technological age yet. Our precious hours at
I call upon the first negative speaker, Caroline Miller.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, adjudicators, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that we should follow Finland and phase out cursive writing in schools. We agree with the definition of Finland given by the affirmative team. However, we, the negative team, define the term we as South Australia, not Australia. We also believe that cursive writing is the form of handwriting taught in South Australian schools, which is South Australian modern cursive. Today, as first speaker, I will be talking to you about how our South Australian modern cursive is accurate and legible, that phasing out cursive writing is not universal and has important benefits, and is an important skill and has that human touch which makes us unique. Our second speaker will talk to you about the cognitive and neurological benefits of cursive writing. Our third speaker will rebut and sum up our team case. Before I begin, I would like to point out some flaws in the opposition's argument. The first speaker of the affirmative team has stated that most people now type and that cursive is unnecessary, as typing is just as fast and more convenient. We agree that typing is used more and more. However, there are some situations where cursive is needed, such as signatures on forms or when one may choose to handwrite, such as personal letters or cards. Learning to type also makes little demand on the brain, whereas cursive has significant neurological benefits. Today I will be discussing 3 points. My first point is that South Australian modern cursive is the form of cursive writing used in South Australia. It is not the same as cursive writing in Finland. South Australian modern cursive is a quick and legible form of handwriting. Why is Finland phasing out the teaching of cursive writing? Does this mean it is phasing out handwriting altogether? No, it will continue to teach printing. There are 2 main reasons why Finland is doing this. Firstly, it is because much of their communication is done digitally, and so handwriting is used less. Secondly, the Finns introduced new ways of writing their letters in 1986. Minna Harmonen of Finland's National Board of Education says that we moved from the old Swedish-derived handwriting style to a more modern one, and now a few of letters look very similar to each other in cursive writing. It's not easy for children to write or for teachers to read. In Australia, we don't have this problem. Why should we follow Finland, which is continuing to teach printing, but not cursive handwriting? In South Australia, our modern cursive is perfectly legible. To go back to printing, like Finland, would simply slow Australian children down when they write. My second point is that phasing out cursive writing is not universal because it has cognitive and neurological benefits. The trend of phasing out cursive handwriting is not universal, and some countries have in fact gone in the opposite direction. France, for instance, reintroduced the teaching of cursive writing in the year 2000. France had done this because of the mounting evidence that learning to write in cursive has a range of cognitive and neurological benefits, such as improving motor and visual skills and cognitive function and brain development. Our second speaker will speak to you about these in more detail. My third point is that handwriting is still a requirement and has that human touch, which makes us unique. Handwritten exams remain the primary tool for student assessment in Australia. Phasing out cursive writing would lead to children not having the right training to write clearly and accurately under time pressure. Also, handwritten communication is individually unique and special. It has that inherent human touch and conveys so much more than soulless keyboard-generated text. So, Madam Chairman, adjudicators.
I call upon the second affirmative speaker, Emma Tanner.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, adjudicators, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that we should follow Finland and phase out cursive writing in schools. We as the affirmative team very strongly believe this to be true. We disagree with the redefinition of we because South Australia uses the Australian curriculum and our schools educate students in line with Australian standards. The opposition has argued that cursive is important for cognitive development. Yes, it may be, but there are many other skills which are more relevant and valuable, and they would still develop your brain. Cursive is personal, they have said, but we'd like to argue that print is also personal. Our first speaker, Charlie, has spoken to you on how schools' teaching should reflect and support the technology which is becoming increasingly available. He has also told you why it would be a good idea to follow Finland's lead, as they are the front runners in innovative education. As our second speaker, I will be speaking on how those who teach it do not use it themselves. I will also inform you why it is a waste of precious school time and how it does not fit into our curriculum as it stands. I will also remind you of the importance of knowing when to let things go and how decisions which may be controversial at the time have proved to be for the better. My first point is based on a survey conducted by Zaina Blozer, a publisher of cursive textbooks, at a conference for handwriting teachers in 2012. They found that only a minority of 37% used the cursive that they taught students. The majority used either print or a hybrid form with only very basic joints which didn't resemble cursive or any cursive techniques. And before you say that you need to know cursive to know hybrid, well, hybrid existed in the Renaissance era, which is before the Baroque era, in which cursive was invented. Cursive is in fact just one unnecessary step further from hybrid, where the letter forms are altered to fit the unnatural join everything cursive rule. Hybrid is often used by people who are taught print long enough to adopt and mature their print form. When we are spending 2 out of 5 years of our handwriting schooling learning cursive, this in fact reduces the amount of time that we have to form our own hybrid print, which, ladies and gentlemen, is the most efficient form of writing as reported by the New York Times. Therefore, cursive is simply unnecessary for efficient, usable handwriting. Secondly, cursive neither fits into nor is needed in the Australian curriculum. According to australiancurriculum.au.edu, the teaching of joint script is introduced in Year 3 and concludes in Year 4. However, before this, in reception, Year 1 and Year 2, students are taught print, specifically unjoined script. We are all for teaching students some form of penmanship, but why learn 2 forms? To combine my 2 points so far, in Australia it is mandatory for students to learn cursive after they have already learnt print in the first 3 years of their formal schooling. Evidence shows that the majority choose to use the first form of penmanship learned. Even if a choice minority may use cursive, surely there are other skills which could be learnt in its place and would benefit a larger proportion of students. Lastly, we would like to point out that the same questions and debates have been raised before with the abacus, the slide rule, and old languages which hold no day-to-day use in the 21st century, such as Latin. And if we travel even further back, well, education used to be about spinning yarn. They're of our curriculum, but they haven't completely died. This is what cursive should be to us now. We're not stopping cursive everywhere or forbidding you to learn it. Other skills that used to be essential have now progressed with technology, and we have realised that it is for the better. It's important when to let things go. The very essence of a school is to equip its students with skills beneficial to their future and community. The teaching of these skills must be based on workplace demand, of which there is very little, if any at all, for cursive, relevance to everyday life, and they must reflect and support the technology available. Cursive, while it may be beautiful to look at to some, is no longer relevant to the school curriculum and should be phased out to make time for more important learning. If we make this decision now, we will reap its benefits in the future when we no longer have to worry about the difficulties of teaching 2 ways to write one language. We believe our arguments have proved to you why we should be finished with the cursive that is cursive in our schools. Thank you.
the negative speaker message round.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that we should follow Finland and phase out cursive writing in schools. We, being the negative team, strongly believe that this statement is obviously false. Before I continue any further, I would like to point out our definitions of we and cursive. We define we as South Australian community and cursive as South Australian modern cursive. Before I go any further, I would also like to point out some errors and point out how to fix them in the affirmative team. The second affirmative speaker has just attempted to explain that adults do not use cursive in their lives. This is incorrect because only one career has been spoken about. The cursive may not be used by teachers, but there are hundreds of other careers that may. The argument is therefore irrelevant. The first affirmative speaker has attempted to tell you that Finland's education is superior to that of Australia, and therefore we should follow what they are doing in their schools and phase out cursive. Although it is true that Finland does have an extremely good education system, the speaker has provided no proof to show that cursive is a contributing factor in the learning of the students. Furthermore, the system in Finland was outstanding even prior to the removal of cursive lessons. This further enforces the fact that cursive does not improve children's learning. Today, I'll be speaking to you about one major point. In recent times, with technology advancing and schools now use computer programs like Microsoft Word, experiments have been conducted to find whether teaching cursive in schools is good. I will be speaking about 3 specific neurological experiments, all trying to answer this one question. The first I'll speak about is from France, from Redline, an international languages website, where 2 neuroscientists, Marie Cloncamp and Jean-Luc Vellet, from the Institut des Neurosciences Cognitives de la Méditerranée, conducted one such experiment using functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI for short, to view the brains of adult volunteers. Their experiments led to the question of whether writing is essential to learning to read. So another experiment was conducted on 76 kindergartners who had to learn the letters by either cursive or typing. The results of this were clear. The children taught the letters by cursive were far more capable to identify these letters than those taught by typing. If a child hasn't learnt to write by hand, says Vellet, he is unable to use sensory motor memory for letters, which is missing. He then continues to explain that this means they will have more trouble reading, a vital skill in later life. It was because of the initial experiment that cursive lessons were reintroduced into French classes. The next experiment I will talk about is from Cursive Logic, a website that teaches people how to write in cursive. It is one where 2 researchers, Pam Muller and Daniel Oppenheimer, discovered that students listening to a lecture and taking notes in cursive is more effective than by typing them. They found that when asked conceptual questions on the topic of the lecture, the students who took notes by writing in cursive performed better than those who used laptops. They also concluded that when taking notes in cursive, the students rewrote the key points in their own words. The article states this improves both understanding and recall. The same article continues to say that writing in cursive is also more beneficial than print and can be especially helpful for people with dyslexia and dysgraphia. The final article I will speak about is by ThinkWrite, a website that aims to teach children from 3 to 7 years old how to write in cursive. It says that Dr. David Sortino explains that learning to write in cursive is a better way to learn handwriting, as the motions are stored in the cerebellum, a part of the brain. Therefore, these actions will become a subconscious motion early in life. This improves their motor skills, but also increases attention spans, impulse control, and problem solving. And so, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm sure I have proven to you this evening, we, being the negative team, justifiably disagree with the statement that we should follow Finland and phase out cursive writing in schools, as there has been much research showing cursive has greatly beneficial effects on the writer. Thank you.
the third affirmative speaker, Annika Fulham-Sanders.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that we should follow Finland and phase out handwriting in schools. We, the affirmative team, strongly believe this statement to be true. The first speaker has tried to tell you that handwriting adds a human touch. We would like to argue that yes, we agree, handwriting does add a human touch, but that does not necessarily mean we need to teach cursive. Print writing, or even hybrid writing, are both alternatives to typing and both add a human touch. They also do not take precious time out of school hours. The first speaker also talked about signatures and how if we don't learn cursive, we will not be able to effectively use them. In this modern age, signatures no longer need cursive. Pins, codes, even finger scans are all as legitimate as signatures. Cursive signatures also hold no greater legal validity than these other forms. The second speaker defined we as South Australia. Again, we would like to emphasise that we all follow the same curriculum as the whole of Australia. Therefore, we should include the whole of Australia. The second speaker talked about neurological brain benefits. We agree that cursive writing improves brain benefits, but we would also like to point out that Kate Gladstone, handwriting expert, says that any type of handwriting benefits in similar ways to cursive. While we look at cursive and make claims of its benefits, we completely ignore the other styles that engage your brain as well. So, Australia, why aren't we following in Finland's footsteps in discarding a font of writing that, while yes, is beneficial to the brain, is also wasting school time in something that can be replaced with other beneficial alternatives that don't take up school time? The second speaker emphasised that learning cursive was more effective than learning typing. He also forgot to mention that print and hybrid writing are quite effective in benefiting the brain. These two forms are both effective ways of engaging brains without wasting school time, as I just mentioned. He talked about how cursive is beneficial to your brain. Skills such as typing are also beneficial in the real world, not only to your brain, but to your future career and life, which cursive is not. Our first speaker, Charlie, spoke to you about how the country leading in world education have disposed of cursive. And if a country so highly regarded in education have made a decision like this, then they must have a reason for doing so. He also expressed that with modern technology superseding cursive handwriting, there isn't a need for it anymore. Our second speaker, Emma, pointed out that the majority of people who are currently teaching cursive writing do not use the skills themselves in daily life. She also expressed that students are taught print until year 3 and 4. That's a whole 3 years before kids start to learn cursive. Print is already ingrained in their minds, so why teach them a new form years later? She concluded saying that we have been dropping subjects that are deemed no longer necessary by society for years, and with the new technological age we should follow in our predecessors' footsteps and allocate the much needed time spent learning cursive for something more relevant by today's standards. So, ladies and gentlemen, to sign off, while Finland has embraced change, Australia is still spending countless school hours teaching an already dying art. While handwriting itself is still relevant, cursive handwriting is becoming increasingly unnecessary in this modern age. Typing and print writing are much more common and easier ways of getting the same job done. So, for centuries, we have forgotten things that are no longer needed. So, why not do the same for cursive handwriting? Ladies and gentlemen, I will leave you with this. Handwriting is just a means to an end. Communication. When you have a better, faster, and more accurate tools at your disposal, you use them and archive the old ones. That is the nature of progress. Thank you.
call the third negative speaker, Charlotte Jones.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for this debate is that we should follow Finland and phase out cursive writing in school. We as the negative team strongly believe that this statement is false. Before I begin, I would like to point out some obvious flaws in the affirmative team's argument. The first speaker of the affirmative team has stated that most people now type and that cursive is unnecessary, as typing is just as fast and more convenient. We agree that typing is used more and more. However, there are some situations where cursive is needed, such as signatures on forms or when one may choose to handwrite, such as personal letters or cards. Learning to type also makes little demand on the brain, whereas cursive has significant neurological benefits. The first speaker of the affirmative team has also stated that education in Finland is very good and that they don't use cursive, suggesting that cursive is not needed for a good education. This is not true. Just because their education is good doesn't mean that it is because they have phased out cursive writing. There is no connection between these two things. Therefore, this argument is invalid. The second speaker of the affirmative team has tried to tell you that there are other essential skills students should focus their learning on, and that cursive is not important. This is absolutely not true. Cursive writing is the basis for all essential student skills. It is scientifically proven to significantly improve motor skills, increase attention spans, impulse control, and problem solving. The second affirmative speaker has just attempted to explain that adults do not use cursive in their lives. This is incorrect because only one adult has been spoken about. That cursive may not be used by teachers, but there are hundreds of other adults that may. Therefore, this argument is also irrelevant. The third speaker of the affirmative team has tried to tell you that cursive signatures have no special legal validity over any other kind of handwriting, so it is not necessary. We are not saying that cursive has to be used for signatures. We are simply saying that there are many situations where cursive script is necessary or useful. The third speaker of the affirmative team has misled you to believe that all the research about improving learning applies to handwriting in general, not specifically cursive, and that printing would produce similar benefits. This is actually false. Learning cursive is good for children's fine motor skills, and writing in cursive generally helps students retain more information and generate more ideas. Studies have also shown that kids who learn cursive rather than simply printing score better on reading and spelling tests. Perhaps because the linked-up cursive forces writers to think of words as wholes instead of parts. Some people suffer brain injuries that damage their ability to write and understand print, while their ability to comprehend cursive remains. Researchers have also suggested that cursive can serve as a teaching aid for children with learning impairments like dyslexia and dysgraphia. Now I will summarise my team's case. Our first speaker spoke to you about how our English link script is perfectly legible, unlike the Finnish way of writing letters. The Finnish have moved from the old Swedish-derived handwriting style to a more modern one, and now a few letters look very similar to each other in cursive writing, causing confusion and misunderstandings. We don't have the same problem for English handwriting, so why should we follow the Finnish? To follow Finland's example and to go back to printing will be completely pointless. Her second point was that phasing out cursive writing is not universal because it has cognitive and neurological benefits. Some of the states who have got rid of cursive handwriting are now reconsidering their decision. The trend of phasing out cursive writing is not universal, and some countries have in fact gone in the opposite direction. France, for instance, reintroduced the teaching of cursive writing in the year 2000. France has done this because there is mounting evidence that learning to write in cursive has a range of cognitive and neurological benefits. Our second speaker spoke to you about the neurological benefits of cursive writing. An experiment was conducted on 76 kindergarteners who had to learn letters by cursive or typing. The children taught the letters by cursive were far more capable to identify the letters than those taught by typing. Furthermore, two researchers discovered that students listening to a lecture and taking notes in cursive is more effective than by typing them. They also found that when asked questions on the topic of the lecture,